is really what brought me to using satellite imagery. For trying to map the past, I knew that I had to see differently.
They called it the cradle of civilization, the place where humanity first learned to write, to rule, to dream. But what if everything we thought we knew about Mesopotamia was wrong? For over a century, archaeologists have walked these ancient plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, believing the story of our beginnings had already been told. The rise of Sumer, the birth of kings, the first laws were carved in clay. But now, orbiting hundreds of miles above the earth, a new kind of archaeologist is seeing what no one else ever could. Her name is Sarah Parcak, and her satellite scans are exposing a terrifying new truth, that beneath the soil of Iraq and Syria lies an entire lost world, hidden canals, buried cities, forgotten empires that may be far older, larger, and more advanced than anyone dared to imagine. What she's found could rewrite human history, and it's sending shockwaves through the world of science. Because if Parcak is right, then civilization didn't begin where we thought, and the real story of humanity's rise is far stranger and far darker than we ever believed. Beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, something ancient is stirring again, and it changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing discoveries that prove history is never truly buried. Long before steel and glass scraped the skies, before maps had borders or nations had names, there was a land the ancients called Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers. It was here, between the Tigris and Euphrates, that humanity first dared to dream in stone and clay. Under the heat of the Bronze Age sun, the first cities rose: Uruk, Ur, Akkad, Babylon, shimmering on the horizon like stories waiting to be written. This was where everything began: writing, kingship, mathematics, even the first laws carved into clay tablets that still whisper the rules of a world long gone. Temples crowned with gold reflected in irrigation canals, markets buzzed with the first merchants, and poets etched hymns to gods who ruled the wind and flood. Humanity had learned how to shape chaos into civilization. For over a century, archaeologists believed they had uncovered nearly all of it. The map of Mesopotamia seemed complete. The great ziggurats of Uruk, the palace walls of Babylon, the archives of Assyria. Scholars told a clean, proud story. Here, civilization was born, rose in splendor, and passed its torch to the world. The cradle of humanity, neatly wrapped and catalogued in museum glass. But beneath the dust, the story whispered differently. In crumbling Sumerian tablets, strange names appeared, cities never found, rivers that flowed into nothing, kings who ruled before history itself began. Some ancient texts spoke of entire lands swallowed by sand, of temples that shone like stars and then vanished overnight. The words were dismissed as myth, poetic exaggeration from a people learning to remember. Until now, because even as the old world seemed fully mapped, its soil began to stir again. Archaeologists started to wonder, had they really found all there was to find? The earth of Mesopotamia has a habit of hiding its secrets. Whole cities turned to dust, buried beneath farms, roads, and war-torn plains. And yet, hints kept emerging. Local shepherds stumbled upon fragments of pottery and tablets where no known settlement existed. Faint mounds rose like forgotten graves of empires long erased. Enter a new kind of archaeologist, one who doesn't carry a shovel but a satellite. Sarah Parcak, often called the woman who sees the past from space, would soon turn her gaze toward the ancient cradle. Using orbiting eyes and AI to read the land in light invisible to humans, she would begin to uncover what no map had shown: traces of lost cities, unseen patterns carved into the earth itself. But before that revelation, the world still clung to its old story, of Sumer's glory, of Hammurabi's code, of Babylon's hanging gardens, a tale that seemed complete, yet beneath every myth lies a shadow, and beneath Mesopotamia's polished history lies something even more haunting, the possibility that the first chapter of civilization isn't the beginning at all, but merely a page torn from a far greater book, one still buried in the dust. So as we return to the land between two rivers, remember this: every empire begins with a story, but the oldest stories never end. They wait, silent, patient, written in the soil, for someone to learn how to see them again. Subscribe for what comes next, because what Sarah Parcak's satellites have found beneath Mesopotamia might just rewrite everything we thought we knew about where we came from. If you stand on the plains of southern Iraq at dawn, when the mist still clings to the fields, you might not realize you're walking on the bones of empires. The land is quiet now, just farmers guiding donkeys through furrows, the wind stirring the reeds. But beneath their feet, under layers of silt and silence, lie the ruins of the first world humanity ever built. For over a century, archaeologists have dug, mapped, and measured these ancient lands, uncovering palaces, temples, and tablets that spoke of gods and kings. Yet even after thousands of excavations, more than 80% of Mesopotamia remains untouched. Imagine that, the birthplace of civilization, still largely asleep beneath the soil. Local farmers have always known the earth hides something. Their plows strike pottery shards where no settlement should be. Children find fragments of tools, beads, and clay seals washed up after storms. Strange mounds rise across the plains, too regular to be natural, too silent to be ignored. Each one could be a city, a temple, a forgotten world waiting to be remembered. But the truth is, no one can dig everywhere. Modern wars, shifting sands, and the changing rivers have buried entire landscapes under layers of time. Satellite photos show faint scars in the desert, lines, circles, and grids invisible to the eye. Archaeologists call them ghost sites, traces of civilizations erased by the centuries. And yet, there was always the question, the one that kept whispering in every excavation trench. What if the real Mesopotamia, the true cradle of civilization, is still hidden beneath our feet? That question reached the ears of a woman who looked not down, but up, to space. Sarah Parcak, an archaeologist armed with satellites and artificial intelligence, began to see the land differently. From hundreds of miles above, she could read the subtle bruises in the earth, the spectral patterns of walls, roads, and temples buried under centuries of dust. Her technology could sense what no human eye could, tiny changes in light, moisture, and vegetation that betrayed what slept below. With AI scanning endless images, patterns began to emerge, forgotten canals threading through the sand, geometric outlines of cities no one had ever mapped. Parcak called it space archaeology. But what she was really doing was giving the dead a voice again. Her discoveries stunned the world. Satellite data revealed over 17,000 possible ancient sites across the Middle East, places where no archaeologist had ever set foot. Some of them were older than the Sumerians, older even than the cities we thought were first. It was as if the ground itself had been keeping secrets, waiting for someone with the right kind of eyes to ask. But with every new discovery came unease. What else lay hidden? How many stories of humanity had been swallowed by shifting sands and war? Parcak's maps showed that Mesopotamia wasn't just one civilization. It was layer upon layer of forgotten worlds, each buried under the next like the pages of an unread book. The more she uncovered, the more the mystery deepened. The soil was no longer silent. It was whispering. Whispering of cities built before writing, of gods who may have walked among men, of a past far stranger and more terrifying than the textbooks dared to tell. And in that whispering dust, Sarah Parcak found her purpose: to listen, to reveal, and to remind us that the story of humanity is still being written, one lost city at a time. They say the past is gone, lost to time, buried under dust and ruin. But what if the past could still be seen, just not by human eyes? High above the earth, where clouds drift like ancient ghosts and continents stretch like forgotten maps, one woman has learned to read the planet's secrets. Her name is Sarah Parcak, and the world calls her the woman who sees the past from space. While most archaeologists dig downward, Parcak looks upward, using NASA-grade satellites and artificial intelligence to scan the very skin of the Earth. To her, deserts are not empty wastelands, but vast libraries, where every dune hides a chapter of human history. She studies the faintest shifts in color, light, and moisture that satellites record, patterns invisible to the human eye, but which whisper the outlines of ancient walls, buried canals, forgotten roads, and lost city grids. And it was over the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, that her gaze lingered longest. When she aimed her algorithms at Iraq and Syria, something astonishing began to appear. Across the sands and plains, hundreds of faint geometric scars revealed themselves, evidence of temples, fortresses, and entire cities lost for thousands of years. Her AI models highlighted structures no one had ever mapped, no one had ever walked upon. It was as if the land itself was remembering. These were not random ruins. The coordinates matched ancient names found in Sumerian and Akkadian texts, cities once thought to be myth. Some sites aligned eerily with tales from the Epic of Gilgamesh and the earliest flood stories. The ground had been silent for 5 millennia, and now, through machines orbiting hundreds of miles above, it was speaking again. The scientific world was stunned. Parcak's discoveries didn't just add new dots to the map, they redrew it entirely. Her surveys suggested that Mesopotamia had been far more complex, vast, and interconnected than anyone imagined. This wasn't a handful of city-states, it was a network of civilizations, linked by ancient rivers and trade routes long erased by time. But what truly captured the imagination wasn't just the data, it was the wonder. Here was proof that technology could become a bridge to our deepest past, that artificial intelligence could help humanity rediscover itself. Still, in the midst of awe, something unsettling stirred. Parcak's AI began detecting structures deeper, older, and stranger, their patterns unlike any known Sumerian or Akkadian design. Some appeared beneath known sites, as if civilizations had been built atop older ones, layer upon forgotten layer. The results challenged everything historians believed about when and how human society began. What if the Mesopotamia we know, the proud ziggurats, the great kings, the first tablets, was not the beginning of civilization, but merely a continuation of something far older? Sarah Parcak had set out to find the lost cities of the ancient world. Instead, she may have found evidence of a world that shouldn't exist, a civilization that time tried to erase and that only the cold mechanical eyes of AI could see. And so, the woman who sees from space stands at the edge of a new era, where science meets myth and satellites stare into the soul of humanity's forgotten dawn. Subscribe, because the next layer of this story will take us deeper into the desert, where the earth itself begins to reveal what it's been hiding for 5,000 years. For centuries, archaeologists have relied on spades, brushes, and instinct, tools of patience and dust. But the sands of Mesopotamia hold more secrets than any one lifetime can uncover. Entire empires sleep beneath the soil, their outlines erased by time. To find them all, humanity would need a different kind of archaeologist, one that never tires, never blinks, and can see patterns no human could ever recognize. Enter the machine. Sarah Parcak, already known as the woman who sees from space, began training artificial intelligence to read the earth as if it were an ancient text. She fed the AI decades of satellite data, snapshots of Iraq, Syria, and the river plains of the Fertile Crescent, each pixel a syllable of history. The program learned to detect the subtle fingerprints of civilization, faint circular shadows, changes in soil moisture, unnatural geometries invisible to the human eye. Soon, the AI began to speak in patterns. Across the desert, it traced the faint lines of ancient canals that once fed lush farmlands. It outlined defensive walls stretching for miles, their stones long since buried. It highlighted the perfect symmetry of temple complexes, patterns too precise to be chance. Parcak's algorithms compared images taken years apart, revealing how shifting sands had slowly swallowed entire cities. Then something unexpected happened. As Parcak and her team overlaid the data, the scattered sites began to connect, like stars forming a constellation. The AI was drawing a network, cities, temples, and trade routes woven across Mesopotamia in perfect alignment. It wasn't chaos beneath the dust, it was design. Historians had long believed that Mesopotamia was a land of separate city-states, proud, independent, and often at war. But Parcak's discovery suggested something far more astonishing. These cities were connected by deliberate geometry, by shared systems of irrigation, defense, and culture. It was not a cluster of civilizations, but a single, vast intelligence of humanity, a network spanning hundreds of miles, crafted thousands of years before the pyramids. The implications were staggering. If the patterns were right, then civilization might have begun far earlier than we thought, perhaps thousands of years before recorded history. Ancient texts once dismissed as myth suddenly seemed plausible. Names of lost kingdoms whispered on clay tablets began to match the AI's coordinates. Was this the architecture of the first global society, one that rose, fell, and was forgotten before Sumer even began? Scholars argued governments grew cautious, and the desert kept its silence, but the data did not lie. Every day, Parcak's AI uncovered more, new dots on the digital map of human memory. It was as though the earth itself was revealing its code, line by line, through the eyes of a machine. And somewhere in that endless data stream, something uncanny flickered, a pattern older, deeper, and unlike the rest. Too perfect, too deliberate. The AI flagged it, again and again, as if recognizing something it shouldn't. Parcak hesitated. What if it wasn't just mapping the past, but rediscovering something humanity was never meant to forget? The age of the spade was ending. The age of machine sight had begun. And with it, the rewriting of everything we thought we knew about civilization's first dawn. Subscribe, because the next revelation takes us into the heart of the mystery, where AI exposes what lies beneath the first cities of humankind. And the truth may be darker than history ever dared to tell. At first, it was just data, lines, shapes, and coordinates flickering across a computer screen. But then the patterns began to breathe. What the AI uncovered beneath Mesopotamia wasn't random. It was deliberate, and the deeper it looked, the more the past began to move. Sarah Parcak had spent years mapping the invisible, cities lost beneath deserts, temples swallowed by dust, riverbeds turned to stone. But now her satellites and AI were seeing something that defied even her imagination. Beneath modern towns and farmlands, far below the familiar layers of Sumer and Akkad, the machines detected something vast. Perfect grids, circular complexes, and straight lines stretching for miles, all buried deep under the earth. At first, the patterns seemed impossible. The alignments were too precise. Structures oriented to the stars, canals that formed geometric constellations, temples positioned along ancient celestial paths. Some of these shapes appeared older than recorded history itself. When Parcak compared them with existing archaeological timelines, the data whispered something terrifying. Civilization may not have begun once. It may have begun, fallen, and then begun again. The implications shattered everything. Historians had long told a clean story that Sumer birthed writing, cities, and law. But Parcak's findings suggested a forgotten chapter before that, a civilization advanced enough to shape rivers, plan entire cities, and align their monuments with the heavens. If true, this meant humanity had already climbed to the heights of civilization, only to collapse and start anew. It wasn't a straight line of progress. It was a cycle, a memory buried and reborn. As Parcak's AI traced these networks, strange correlations emerged: flood layers, magnetic anomalies, celestial alignments pointing to catastrophic events, as if the Earth itself recorded each ending. Some researchers began to wonder if the oldest flood legends, the ones that became the tales of Gilgamesh and Noah, were memories of these lost worlds, preserved in myth after the cities themselves had turned to dust. For Parcak, the discovery was both thrilling and haunting. "The past isn't gone," she said quietly in an interview. "It's just buried, waiting for light." And yet, the light she'd brought to the ancient ground revealed something more than lost cities. It revealed a truth about us, that humanity's story may not be one of creation, but of repetition. We rise, we build, we forget, and then we rise again. The AI had mapped more than ruins. It had drawn a mirror. In the patterns beneath Mesopotamia, it reflected the outline of our own world. Networks, grids, towers, all humming with life and fragility. We, too, might be another layer in an endless cycle of forgotten worlds, each believing itself to be the first, each destined to become the next whisper in the sand. The revelation spread like wildfire. Headlines hailed it as the discovery that could rewrite history, while others warned of dangerous speculation. But no one could deny what the machines had seen. Beneath the birthplace of civilization, there lay another, older, silent, and waiting. And somewhere, in that vast digital map of the earth, a final message seemed to echo through time. History doesn't end. It buries itself and waits for us to find it again. Subscribe, because Sarah Parcak's AI hasn't finished its search yet, and what it finds next might not just rewrite our past, it might warn us about our future.